This video was made possible by Class Central, which lets you watch tens of thousands of lectures from the best universities in America and around the world from the comfort of your own home. Check it out by clicking the link below this video. Our Pseudoscience miniseries now brings us to Extrasensory Perception, or ESP, which is an umbrella term to describe any kind of acquisition of information through means other than the established physical senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Someone claims to have ESP when they tell us that they're able to sense things outside their body through some means other than these five senses. So an example would be telepathy, sensing another person's thoughts; clairvoyance, sensing events in another location; precognition, seeing the future; retrocognition, seeing things in the past that you didn't witness; or mediumship, which would be communicating with the dead or knowing things about the spirits of dead people. Some people call ESP a sixth sense. A psychic is someone who claims to have one or more types of ESP, and we deal with psychics in another episode of the miniseries. There's a 2016 report from IBIS World, which says that 85,000 people in the United States work as psychics, collectively earning about $2 billion a year. And there's a 2017 YouGov poll, which says that a fifth of Americans have consulted a psychic in their life, and that more than a third of Americans have personally experienced psychic ability in themselves at least one time. A quarter of Americans also say that they can supernaturally predict the future, and 38% say that they have sensed the presence of a spirit during their life. Without these numbers, you might not realize how relevant this pseudoscience miniseries is. You might see these videos on different pseudosciences and think, who cares? Only wacky people believe this stuff. But no, the numbers are stunning, and many people have no idea how pseudoscience pervades our society. So in a 2014 study in the scientific journal PLOS1, adults were shown before and after photos of the same woman for a second and a half. Sometimes they were the same photos, sometimes something was changed about the woman, maybe the color of her hair, whether she was wearing glasses, maybe her earrings changed. The people being tested were asked if the pictures were the same or different. And if they noticed a difference, they were asked what the difference was. Mostly people could correctly identify when there was a change and when there wasn't. But what's interesting about the results was that people were able to detect a change even when they weren't able to cognitively and consciously identify and express what the change was. And when the participants were informed of the results, the fact that they were able to detect changes even without being able to explain what they were, some of the participants believed that they had some kind of ESP because they intuitively knew that something about the photo had changed, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. And they said, well, the reason is some kind of extrasensory perception. One of the study's co-authors said, quote, people are correct in believing that they have an ability to sense changes in their environment, even when they cannot verbally identify what those changes are. It is just that this ability is not a quasi-magical sixth sense. It can be explained in terms of known processes. And this is a major theme in pseudoscience. Humans want to explain what they don't understand, often by any means necessary. You might not be conscious of what you're perceiving, so you might interpret your correctness as something supernatural. There's a 2008 study at Harvard which used brain scans to test whether people claiming to have ESP were actually acquiring knowledge that couldn't be explained through some kind of normal perception. Before the study, scientists already knew through neuroscience that the brain responds a certain way when it sees something familiar and a different way when it sees something new. Before the subjects were brain scanned, they were shown a bunch of pictures by way of so-called ESP. What I mean by that is the scientists would display the photos on a computer screen in another room, for example, or they would show the photos to the subject's relative or partner or friend in a different room. They displayed it in a number of other ways that someone with ESP might claim could get them to sense the image without actually seeing it. Then they put them in an fMRI brain scanner and showed them the same pictures mixed with new pictures that hadn't yet been used. Not only could the subjects not identify which pictures were new with any statistical significance, but their brains responded the same way to every photo, responding the way a brain would respond if it had never seen any of the photos. These studies aren't the full extent of all research into ESP claims, but it's a sample of how we can actually test some of these claims. All the time, people report unexplained knowledge, having a dream where something happens and the next day it happens in real life, or you were thinking about someone and the very next moment you get an email from them. A dream or a feeling coming true can seem or feel too amazing to be a coincidence, but not when you think about it like a statistician. You spend your entire life constantly thinking, feeling, and dreaming, and every once in a while, some of those thoughts and feelings line up with actual events. It would actually be more amazing if it never happened. Much of the time, it's your brain putting things together without you realizing it. Many psychological processes go into what makes up our intuitions and the subconscious inferences we make every day. We aren't fully conscious of all the perceptions we have, and we're rarely conscious of what our brain does with the information. Nothing has proven that anything beyond our five senses, along with our conscious and subconscious minds, are formulating these intuitions. And in fact, to the contrary, there's a lot of evidence showing that our normal senses are actually what inform us when we think that we're using ESP. Many people who call themselves psychics or mediums or clairvoyants probably do believe that they have special abilities. Some of them are also consciously, fraudulently using cold reading techniques to improve their predictions, analyzing someone based on what you already know about them, whether it's their age, their clothing, their body language, or other characteristics. Experiments and studies have failed many times to prove the existence of ESP, which is a major issue if you're trying to claim that it's real. But that doesn't prove it's not real, which is what gets us to another problem with ESP and lots of pseudosciences, which is that they are unfalsifiable. You can't prove that ESP definitively does not occur. As skeptics, this is when our BS detector should go off, right? There's no experiment or observation that could disprove ESP. So by definition, the claim that ESP is real cannot be a scientific claim evaluated scientifically or empirically. It's effectively a claim that is of no use to anyone in the real world who cares about evidence. Some who believe in ESP might say claims about ESP aren't supposed to be scientific because it's by its nature supernatural. And therefore, it's not even fair to subject ESP to the type of empirical scrutiny that one might want. This would be nonsense because ESP supposedly interacts with the physical world. We're talking about having visions or perceptions about what's happening in material reality. So it should be easy to prove the accuracy of ESP if it were actually accurate. And at this point, it's unclear what kind of conversation we can even really have about that element. One of the biggest pushbacks against ESP is common sense, combined with what we already know scientifically about the natural world, especially about vision, hearing, neuroscience, psychology, physics. How could ESP possibly work? It's a difficult question for believers in ESP to answer. But if you want real scientific answers about how the human mind and intuition work, check out some of the excellent psychology lecture videos over at Class Central. Class Central offers tens of thousands of university courses on psychology and virtually any other subject you can imagine. You can click the link in the description to start searching for top-rated college lectures from world-renowned universities. They've got everything: business, science, math, computer programming, politics, economics. You'll find something you'll love, and tons of courses are 100% free. Check it out at class-central.com/Pakman, or just click the link under this video.